Nestled along the pristine coastline, where blue waters gently kiss the golden sandy shores, lies the enchanting hidden gem known as Little Bay. Here the waves crash against the shore with a fierce intensity, their rhythmic dance inviting all who dared to challenge the mighty ocean. Among those who were once drawn to its refreshing embrace was a seasoned swimmer whose passion for the water knew no bounds. However, on one particular day, destiny had woven a different tale as a great white shark emerged from its depth, exuding awe and terror in equal measure. The result left the locals shaken to the core. 35-year-old Simon Nellist was born and raised in Cornwall Village. He served in the British Air Force, and when it was time for him to retire, he set off to explore his life's greatest passions. He bid his family goodbye and took a plane to Australia for what he thought would be a short stay. While there, he experienced nature in its most raw and untamed form, unlike anywhere else he had been. Soon after landing, he also met someone he described as the girl of his dreams, Jessie Ho, and his plans of ever going back to his country were quickly canceled. He had always been an ocean enthusiast, and now that he had moved closer to the beach in Little Bay, East Sydney, there was no separating him from the blue, alluring waters. Within no time, he had been certified as a diving instructor and a member of the city's scuba diving social club. As a result, he became a frequent swimmer in the ocean, so much so that the locals had grown fond of his presence. It was, therefore, no surprise that on the sunny afternoon of February 22, 2022, Simon set out for another exhilarating experience in the ocean. Like any typical day at this beach, the golfers were playing in the courses nearby. Fishermen were tightly holding onto their fishing rods on the rocks, hoping that their efforts would be rewarded generously, and the likes of Simon were getting ready to deeply immerse their bodies in the cold, turquoise waters. Simon valued the community around him. It had been very kind to him as a stranger in the country, and so whenever the community events would be organized, he wouldn't hesitate to take part in them. And now, with the Malabar Magic Ocean Swim Charity event set to take place in 4 days, he was not only at the ocean for his casual swim, but to also perfect his strokes. Donned in his wetsuit, Simon stepped into the ocean, and immediately his heart broke into a little dance. He was in his happy place, and there was nowhere else he would have wanted to be. Slowly by slowly, he began swimming further away from the ocean. With each stroke, his powerful arms sliced through the crystal-clear water, propelling him forward with unwavering determination. Simon kept swimming until he was about 150 meters offshore, where the waters were less crowded, and a swimmer of his caliber could enjoy his time in the ocean. Simon had immense respect for nature as a whole, and he was always keen to encourage his students to do the same. He also had a fearless spirit and dared to push his limits. Once, while at Rainbow Beach near Fraser Island with his fiancée Jessie, Simon swam alongside sharks, not one but 10 of them. It was therefore evident that he was willing to do more than the average man would dare to. Severally, Simon had also swam the ocean and unexpectedly encountered sharks without incident. It was at that time that he advocated for the safety of the sharks, calling for the removal of shark nets and life drums, as they were a danger to them. In an ironic turn of events, and unbeknown to him, a shark had spotted him and was not in one of those friendly moods that Simon had experienced before. Simon continued training, pushing his body further and further, completely oblivious to the fact that beneath the calm surface, lurking in the depths, an ancient predator was lurking in the depths and had chosen him as its unwitting target. As he effortlessly glided through the tranquil expanse, the water seemed to hold its breath, concealing the imminent danger that lay just meters away. During his tenure in the RAF, Simon had returned from the tour of Afghanistan twice and unscathed, but even that heart-racing encounter in the war zone had not prepared him for what was about to come. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Having circled him undetected for quite some time, the shark was ready to unleash its legendary sneak attack. As is the norm with great white sharks preying close to the water's surface, its most predictable move on Simon would be to launch itself upward so that its marked prey can fall deep in its mouth cavity. Sure enough, the shark breached the ocean surface and launched itself high in the air, attacking unsuspecting Simon. Simon let out a loud scream that shook every fiber of those who were near him as the sharp rows of teeth sunk into his flesh. Golfers paused their swing mid-air, and beachgoers abandoned their activities as their focus was drawn towards the ocean. Every eye near the ocean looked out to the horizon and was sadly met with what the witnesses described as a car landing in the ocean. Simon used all he had in him to fight off the shark, and finally he was free from the unforgiving jaws of the shark. Terrified and in unimaginable pain, Simon began swimming toward the safety of the shore. Time seemed to slow as his heart raced, pounding against his chest, drowning out the sound of crashing waves. Fear threatened to paralyze him, but deep within his core, a fire burned. A fire fueled by countless hours spent mastering the art of swimming and the unyielding determination to survive. He propelled himself forward, his strokes becoming more powerful, his muscles straining with every ounce of strength left in him. The shark, sensing its prey's desperate struggle, matched his speed, closing in with terrifying precision. His freedom was short-lived. For the second time, the shark lunged at Simon, clamping its jaws on him. What followed next was a frenzied and vicious attack as the shark shook him violently like a rag doll. The water around him turned crimson as the shark tore off his limbs along with chunks of flesh. It was now more clear than ever that Simon was being mauled by a shark. Panic set in as those in the water scrambled their way to the shore, and those at the shore and on the rocks gazed helplessly at Simon. They wanted to help, but they were no match to that mighty beast of the sea. The shark then pulled Simon to the depths of the sea. The calm of the ocean returned, and Simon's fate was sealed. Fishermen who had frequented this beach had always been treated to the calming effect of the crashing waves, but on that day, the ocean was in no way refreshing as they watched Simon and the shark go under, never to be seen again. Shark attacks in Sydney were uncommon, and Simon's came as a complete shock to the locals. The fishermen who had braved these very waters for decades could not comprehend the brutality that had just unfolded before them. Once again, they had been reminded of the fragility of life and the unpredictability of the ocean and the predators therein. The splash of the water, the sickening thuds of flesh against flesh, and Simon's desperate cries for help had stuck with them so hard that hours passed. The attack, some of them could barely keep it together. Only a few were able to quickly snap out of the horrific event and call the lifeguards. When the lifeguards arrived, all they retrieved were fragments of the wetsuit and bits of his remains. In nearly 60 years, Sydney had never reported a fatal shark attack because for decades they had set up shark nets and taken other measures to deter sharks. This fatal event, now witnessed by several people, was a vivid reminder that they were not safe from the ferocious deep-sea predators, even with the nets in place. Following the fatal attack on Simon, the authorities were now tasked with the responsibility of looking for the shark responsible for the tragic death. From the footage collected from the onlookers, the culprit was a great white shark estimated to be about 15 feet long. The following day, drones and helicopters were hovering over the 25-kilometer stretch from Bondi to Cronulla as the authorities looked for any sign of the culprit. On the haunted waters were several jet skis patrolling the ocean with one mission and one mission only: to find the shark responsible for Simon's death. Several beaches were also closed to prevent another attack, and the charity event was canceled in honor of Simon. According to the locals, Simon always stood out among the rest of the swimmers because he always wore a wetsuit, which was not a common garment choice among beachgoers. This, according to experts, could have been the reason why he was targeted, as the shark may have mistaken him for a seal. When the news of his death finally reached his loved ones, Simon's family was heartbroken and devastated, to say the least. His fiancée, who had been looking forward to their wedding set to take place in a few weeks, was left in tears and with only memories of her gone lover. His family in Britain also had a hard time coming to terms with their new reality. Since Simon moved to Australia, they had not seen him. Their wedding was going to finally unite them after the lifting of the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. After 6 years of not seeing him, the last thing they expected was to hear and watch his horrific death. His family will remember him as a wonderful human being and talented photographer who strived to make the world a better place. His friends mourned him as a funny, compassionate man who always got along with people. To the residents of Sydney, Simon's unfortunate reminder serves of the dangers lurking beneath the seemingly safe and tame waters. That concludes our video on the terrifying shark attack on Simon Nellist. What would you do in such a case? Let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification bell for more of these videos.